Westfield.
How long do you have to wait so YouTube doesn't punish you? 10 seconds? Actually, thinking about it, I don't run ads on this channel, so let's go! This is Vandal Hearts. I love Vandal Hearts. Vandal Hearts is incredibly satisfying, and I am sad the series is no more. I don't feel that way just because of the ludicrous geysers of claret that spurt out every time you slaughter an enemy, or a peasant, but I will admit it still offers a decent chunk of satisfaction even to this day. I am, after all, a simpleton. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the start before all the arteries were severed and that. 1996 in Japan, 1997 in Europe and the US, Konami releases a game. Yes, back then Konami actually did more than one thing every 8 years or so, and dare I say it, people really liked Konami games. So Vandal Hearts arrived in the mid-90s with the weight of a respected game-making company behind it. Yes, I am still talking about Konami. Vandal Hearts arrived into a pre-Final Fantasy VII world where the masses weren't quite into Japanese role-playing games like they would be later into 1997, but it still managed to get itself a decent following. I say this not based on sales figures or gauging the general feel from the games media at the time, but because I was able to borrow a copy from a friend at school. If I was able to borrow a copy of a game from someone at my school, it meant it had some level of market penetration beyond a really low level. And that's business science. Vandal Hearts was a turn-based tactical RPG, bringing to mind the likes of Fire Emblem, Shining Force, Tactics Ogre, or an actual game I'd played by that point, XCOM Enemy Unknown. Yes, you'll have figured out from the striking admission there that Vandal Hearts was actually the first tactical JRPG I can actually remember playing, which I'm sure harms my cool dude points in some way or other. Judge me, internet people, I'm too old to care. And while it was definitely the gushing blood that caught my attention, it was the tactical depth, the modifiable classes, the rock-paper-scissors mechanics that actually hooked me. It was the story of corruption and magic that kept my focus, the tale of our hero Ash and his crew of miscreants, misfits and misunderstood magicians on their way to prevent a political upheaval the likes of which would make Brexit look like breakfast. Though, admittedly, both things involved ghoulish demons casting a spell over the general public. Way satire! The wheat protein-based meat substitute of Vandal Hearts constituted of tactical battles, a grid of squares, the chance to move a certain distance and carry out an action for each character's turn, whether that be attacking, casting a spell, digging around for treasure, or whatever else it might be. You would often, usually, be up against it odds-wise, with bands of thieves, pirates and general nasty bastards getting in the way as you attempted to work your way towards the cutscene where someone blows on some grass to make a weird noise. The tactical depth was, I'll go with, present. Not mind-blowing by any stretch, but more than enough to trigger a bit of the grey matter and not too much to make it so you had to actually think particularly hard about anything. Certain classes were stronger than others while weaker than others. It's the rock, paper, scissors thing. While positioning mattered a good deal. Attack from the side? More damaging. Have the higher ground? Well, hello there. Soon enough you'd get the hang of things and it would become pretty much second nature. Funnel the enemy as much as possible through a bottleneck, get your soldiers up front absorbing damage, your long rangers up high raining down the fury, your flying idiots wherever you want because they could cover long distances, and your magic folks in support ready to drop comets on heads. Simple, predictable and satisfying tactics. Yes, the fact was you would quickly learn the best tactic was simply to sit back and wait for the enemy to come to you. This would work in about 90% of the game's levels, discounting those where, say, you try to face off peacefully against a batch of villagers under a murderous curse. And yes, it meant the tactics were, let's go with simpler as a result. But it didn't stop the satisfaction of it all. The look of Vandal Hearts was great, a mix of 2D sprites for characters and rotatable, blocky 3D environments. The sound, music and effects was fantastic, full of epic scores and chonky, oh so chonky clangs and pangs of combat. And the blood, yeah, the blood was good. Such a phenomenal payoff for taking out even the most piddling of enemies. Such a devastating come down were you unlucky enough to lose one of your party. The perfect send-off for tactics well done, or tactics done badly. Now, I won't say Vandal Hearts was a particularly complex game. Compared even to titles that came before it, it was shallower and focused on some really rather basic combat interactions. Fun as they were. But that actually worked in the game's favour. Rather than being another sprawling epic of exploration and grinding, here was a game that would take about 8 to 12 hours to finish, pretty much regardless of your skill level. You couldn't get lost, you would find it hard to meet a battle under level, though it was possible, and you wouldn't get caught up doing menial crap for 20 hours at a time between important story beats. No, Vandal Hearts was a fast food burger of the tactical RPG genre, offering something that satisfied in the moment but ultimately left you with the feeling you could get something better elsewhere. Thing is, sometimes you want another fast food burger. Sometimes you want to go back to an old RPG and not have it take over 2 months of your life. Sometimes you want to kill a band of thieves on the opening mission of a game and have more blood than is actually possible to be in a person spray out of their throat after you land an arrow in them. Vandal Hearts knew its limitations and worked within them wonderfully to make a straightforward, linear, and decidedly lean role-playing game. It was a fantastic game to play back in the day, and to this day it's a fantastic game to go back to. In an era of gargantuan endless role-playing games, and all other genres that demand you give up a significant chunk of your life to grind your way through them, Vandal Hearts still stands out as a fine mix of quick and easy, but also something with enough depth to make you feel like you're accomplishing something when playing it. Shame that couldn't continue in the series, with 1999's Vandal Hearts 2 and 2010's Vandal Hearts Flames of Judgement doing nothing for the franchise and ultimately contributing to Konami leaving it dead in a ditch somewhere. Probably with a much smaller wound in its neck given how pathetic the Blood Gushers were in the sequel. The second game tried to mix it up. It kept the structure of things turn-based, but made yours and your opponent's turn activate simultaneously. This was, on paper, to break up the ease at which you could play through most of the original game by simply standing still and waiting for the enemy to come to you. Problem was, this new system was categorically worse than that of the original, with incredibly predictable AI movements, meaning you would, 9 times out of 10, know exactly where they would be going and be able to both get out of their way and attack them at the same time. Well, either it was that or I was a genius, because that's what happened when I played it. No, the sequel was a downgrade in almost every conceivable way, and while a half-decent 6 out of 10 in its own right, it was left in the dust by its much more impactful, much more blood-filled precursor. As for the third game, Flames of Judgement, well, it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't good enough to get any real focus from me for an extended period of time. I was very happy to see it made, I'm sure in the same way I would be now were a Vandal Hearts sequel to be announced, but ultimately it was a hollow shell of its former self and fell completely between the cracks in an era of gaming dominated both by huge sprawling mainstream titles and more manageable and fun indie games. It was a relic and it showed. None of that can take away from the first game though. Vandal Hearts is, and I say this with no sense of trepidation, a bloody good time. It's a game with real heart and soul put into it. A time capsule looking back at an era where one generation was still mid-leap into the next, and an RPG didn't have to end up as a full-time job to play through. It was dumb, sure, and there were better games before and after it, sure, but Vandal Hearts will always have a place in my heart. And my jugular. Thanks as ever to my lovely patrons on Patreon. I would not, I repeat, not slice your throats open and bathe in your blood as it rained down on me. I have been told I'm too kind. Right, I'm off to see how much blood it would take to fill a bin bag. No, that's not a weird thing to say. You're a weird thing to say. Bye!